Magandang hapon sa lahat. Magandang hapon, Sir Ron. Napakahalaga ng halalan 2022 sa kasaysayan ng ating bayan. Para sa paghahanda natin sa 2022 election, dapat natin kilalanin at suriin ang ating mga kandidato. Ang bawat boto ay mahalaga because our vote will determine the future of the Filipino people. Ako si Mirma Tico Ortiz mula sa Miriam College at host ng Our Peaceful Classroom. Inaanyayahan namin kayo na lumahok at sumama sa kamustahan at kwentuhan sa Katipunan. Kasama po natin sa yugtong ito ang aking co-host na si Sir Ron Capinding, guro mula sa Ateneo de Manila Junior High School at Loyola Schools. Kung hindi po ako nagkakamali, si Ron ay isang batang katipunero or sa modern language ng mga bagets ngayon, batang katip. Tama po ba, Sir Ron? Hello, Sir Ron. Magandang hapon sa iyo.
Hello, Mirma. Yes, katipunero rin ako, batang katip. And so are my sisters and also my wife. Maraming salamat sa inyo at sa Katipuneras for Lenny at sa mga advocacy centers sa Miriam College, Center for Peace Education, Women and Gender Institute, Environmental Studies Institute, at ang Children's Rights Advocacy Center. Masaya ako at napabilang ako sa mga naimbitahang makibahagi sa mga serye ng kumustahan at kwentuhan na magpapakilala sa ating mga kandidato sa likod ng mga camera at ng social media.
Ako naman ay very, very excited, Ron. Feeling ko ay nasa isang classroom ako, isang peaceful classroom kung saan lahat tayo ay makakapagbahagi at matututo. Today, meron tayong mga special guests because today we have with us the sisters of Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Good afternoon. Hello po.
Good afternoon po.
Donna. I see Miss Donna here.
Hello.
Hi.
Ayan. Can you just to the sisters of Senator Kiko who are also Nollers, can you just quickly introduce yourself para naman po makilala kayo ng ating mga viewers, and maybe you can share kung pang ilan po kayo sa magkakapatid.
Bunso muna. Bunso. Sige, from the Bunso. I'm Donna, batch 84, GS 88, high school. I am the doctor of the family. Thank you. I have kabatches here, batch 88, 84, hello. And I'm the doctor of the family. And so I am the last. So I'm the Bunso. Yan. So Ate Felici.
Hello, everyone. I'm Felici Pangilinan Buizon. I'm number 7. So between Donna and I, meron pang isang brother. Okay. Actually, we're 9 all in all, and we belong to the youngest, which is the 3 babies. Okay, but siyempre, hindi na kami baby ngayon. And I'm batch 83, high school. Also, we all went through grade school and high school in Marinol. Marinol pa noon, hindi pa siya Miriam. Yeah. There. Ate Chel.
Nenet muna.
Okay, sorry. I didn't see. Okay.
Sorry, I'm late. Hi, I'm Nenet Pangilinan. I'm now at Sipperich. It's a German. I got married to a German. So I'm batch 77 in high school. Then I'm an industrial engineer, and I also went to AIM for my business course. I'm into furniture. So I'm number 3. I'm the bunso of this first batch of kids, and I was always abused by my ates. Okay, so I will introduce now my next one is Ate Angeli's not yet here, no? Okay, Chel.
Okay, hi, I'm Rita Pangilinan Arenas. I'm a batch 70, Marinol grade school, batch 74, high school. So when martial law was declared 1972, I was part of the NATCOM, Nationalism Committee, and the head of our Nationalism Committee, Fides Lim, disappeared the next school year. But thank God she's okay, and she's very active now. She's still active. So I was in communications for advertising, actually. I worked with the McCann Group for 27 years. And I actually finished my academic subjects for art. I majored in art education at the UP College of Fine Arts, although I started in architecture and interior design. And I finally completed my academic requirements at the age of 46.
Wow.
I went back to school. Ang kulang ko na lang po for a diploma is OJT, okay? 200 hours. My last formal job was I was hired to set up the subsidiary of ABS-CBN that built, designed, and operated Kidzania Manila. Some of you may be familiar with that.
Yes, very familiar.
That was the last thing that I did. Now I'm in consultancy. I live in Calamba. I'm a widow. My husband died 5 years ago, and I have two wonderful children. And I think I work most closely with Kiko because I've been helping him with communications since his first Senate run in 2001. I'm so happy to graduates. Hello, and to all the alumni. Thank you so much for being interested.
And Jelly, I think
in
is
this
here.
epic
Atin Jelly's
battle
here.
we all face. Is Anjali here?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. There she is.
Hello. Good afternoon po. Magandang hapon.
Introduce yourself and then what year you graduated and 1 minute about yourself. Roll running. There.
Okay.
Ate Angeli, you're on. You can introduce yourself.
Wait, how come I don't have that pink background?
No, neither do I. I didn't know how to. The older ones don't know how to.
Send it how? Excuse me. If you send it to me, I know how.
Okay, sorry.
Send it
You just
to
got it 1 minute before this thing. Okay.
Ayan, so nandito po si Miss Angeli. Can you tell us sa pang-ilan po kayo sa magkakapatid?
I'm the second. I was born in 1958. I graduated 1975. I was a member of the singing groups, the year singing group. I was the guitar player, one of two guitar players. I was the captain of the volleyball team and squadron commander, member of the math club, the English drama club, and that's it.
Very active, no? Sir Ron.
Yes,
I'm
so
so
yeah,
honored.
We're
I
so
prefer-
honored. Thank you very much. So nice to meet
Then I
Center to the
finished-
sisters this afternoon.
Yeah,
Yes,
then I
Miss
finished,
Angeli, please.
Yeah, then I finished at the UP. My sister was a valedictorian, but I finished before her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just too bright. Anyway, so I
I
finished
fell in love.
business ad marketing. I majored in marketing 1979. I was 20 years old. There.
Yes.
Wait, I have to tell
Thank
my
you very-
batch. I have to tell my batch. Wait, hang on. Baka naman walang kabatch ako. I told them this
Ayan.
morning.
Ayan,
Okay,
Sir
so
Ron.
that's-
So,
Yeah.
it's so great we're here with
Yes.
everybody. No? Kasama po natin, hindi lang po ang Marinolers and also the students of Miriam College. Nandito rin po yung ating mga community partners at iba-iba pang mga
Yeah.
viewers ngayong hapon na to. So, maraming salamat at napaunlakan nyo kami ngayong
Thank you very much.
hapon.
It's so refreshing to find out about na siyang pala sina Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
11 nga
Um,
dapat eh.
11 nga.
dapat.
Kung
Ako
gusto
po,
nyo
ang-
makita yung picture.
oh yes. Ako po, nakilala ko lang si Senator Kiko nung mid-90s nung sabi ng girlfriend ko na nagli-legal management course na ayaw niya mag-absent sa kurso ng professor niya dahil ang professor niya ay mega boyfriend daw ang tawag nila.
Oh.
Mega boy.
So
nga pala,
right now is a
ito pa-
chance for us to know further about Senator Kiko. Please, do you have pictures to share with us?
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Okay. So just to
excited.
put some just to put some context, kasi syempre, you know, may number 9, may number 1. So medyo, I think it will help to actually see, you know. So may prepare kaming kaunting slideshow. Teka lang, I will just so
Oh, I'm so
teka lang, ha?
cute.
Wala po
and
kami
personal.
dito. This is Ate Chel. But anyway, I think we can share it, and then my sisters can just pop in because we have to, you know, we're just the intro, you know. Kuya will be here at 4:30. So ayan si Kuya hawak ni Mami, and I think Felici was inside. O naka-pink din si Mami dito kasi si Emma na.
Yes.
And green yung sofa.
Prefiguring. Yeah.
Original
Ayan.
Dilawan.
So ito yung buhay ng mas malungkot pa sila dito dahil wala pa kaming dalawa ni Felici. Hindi pa sila nawili sa 6. 3 pa daw. So yan. So you can see Ate Jelly, Chel in yellow, Ate Jelly in pink, and then Ate Nanette in purple. Felici was inside. Ako nasa isipan pa lang. So, if you, ay nako, si Kik, ayan. So, we chose some pictures na medyo nandun si Kuya. Ate Chel, now hindi ko pa masyadong maintindihan to, pero how was Kuya daw as a little boy?
Yes.
Jelly.
How was Kiko like as a brother?
He was
So, ayan
very,
siya.
sakitin si Kiko eh. Kasi
Yes.
he was asthmatic, tapos used to kid him a lot kasi galisin si Kiko eh. So,
Yes.
you know, and
Galisin.
he was also our Tagalog boy. Parang ganon ang tawag namin sa kanya. Oo. So, he was quiet, and up to now,
Participants, 110. 110
he's
na
an
naman.
introvert. So, medyo, yun. Pero mabait talaga siya. He has this funny story where, do you guys remember the story of Marcelino Panivino? Do you know that?
No.
Sounds like an interesting
Yes,
story po.
yes.
That saint, there was this story na
Yes.
nauso noon during our, when Kiko was really young pa, he must have been only mga 7 or 8 years old. It became a big thing among Catholic schools to know about this story, Marcelino Panivino, who was a child saint. And Kiko decided he wanted to be a saint. You know,
Yeah.
so he tried, and he tried to be holy, but it only lasted daw for 2 days. 2 days lang niya kinaya. So as you see, bata pa si Kiko, medyo matayog na yung kanyang ambisyon. But
Just to know,
there's one kwento I have about Angeli and Kiko. Anthony was still a baby. Anthony was in his crib. It was a basket. So newborn si Anthony, and there was this, yung patungan ng basket was this steel, parang wrought iron thing. Nasa kama kami ni Mommy, nagtatalunan, lahat kami nandun. Si Angeli was holding Kiko with her 2 hands like that. Tapos umikot siya dun sa kama ni Mommy. You know, she was swinging Kiko around like that. Kiko was about a
Parang
year
Titanic.
and a half. Nabitawan niya. So that was the first time I saw Kiko fly. Lumipad si Kiko, tumama yung forehead niya dun sa patungan ng basket ni Anthony. That was the fastest bukol I ever saw in my life. Kasing laki ng golf club. Awa ng Diyos, mukhang okay pa naman si Kiko.
Parang ano po, no, nakikita dito sa litrato, sobrang saya nung pamilya nyo kasi ang dami nyo rin. Ang dami nyo rin.
Yeah.
And maraming hindi po nakakaalam kung, you know, how he was like as a brother. Meron pong tanong dito, no, nakikialam po ba siya sa mga choices nyo of suitors when you were growing up?
How was Kiko like as a brother? Siya ba ay, alam ko mabait siya parang santo, no? But in terms of yung affairs sa kanya mga kapatid na babae, how was he?
Actually, I think we were divided kasi into 3s, no? So may 3 ate, may 3 boys, tapos may
Mga bunso.
girl, mga babies. So I guess sa aming mga babies, medyo protective, very protective si Kuya Kiko. Siya pa yata nagdala sa akin sa prom dahil hindi pumayag ang mga boys at daddy na ihatid ako sa Merinol prom ng date ko. Kaya si Kuya Kiko ang nagdala. So I think for us, he was a playmate, but when tumanda na ng konti, ayan, siya na yung medyo commanding. May pagka-commanding
Yeah,
siya eh,
yeah.
as a brother.
Yeah, very protective. Tsaka mahilig talaga sa bata. I remember, I was the first one, obviously, I was the first one who gave birth, no? And my husband was conducting a diving class because he was a diving instructor. So he was in Anilao. In fact, Anthony was in his class. And Kiko was the first one to arrive in the hospital. And they called him, they told him, Mr. Arenas, your wife is in the delivery room. But that was about 3 o'clock pa lang, nandun na si Kiko.
Yeah.
Ang hilig-hilig niya talaga sa mga bata. I mean, he's been such a protective tito talaga to all our children.
Actually,
Yun
hindi pa nga lumalabas, protective na siya. Because when I was pregnant and about to give birth, he was taking the bar and he wrote me this really long letter apologizing that he could not come and see me, because I was about to give birth. So Kiko was really like that. He's really super lambing and talagang he really so excited about our mga anak.
At saka sweet na kapatid, no?
So magkakadugtong silang tatlong lalaki, hindi? O so,
Yes.
talaga.
At
So yung may
Kenneth.
tatlong ate, tatlong lalaki, tas tatlong bunsong babae.
Yes.
My
Ganon,
mom
no?
said, kasi my mom had miscarriage before and after Joseph. So kapag number 4 and number 6, in effect, were miscarriages, and she said she's sure they were boys. So we're excited to meet them, our brothers in heaven someday.
Yes,
So
someday.
in effect, 6 boys and 5 girls. Parang ganon.
Yan.
What would be one trait you personally experience as a sibling that would be valuable rin in running this country as VP? Nung bata pa nakita yun. Narinig ko parang santo na siya nung bata pa, pero sabi niyo 2 days yun, medyo nahirapan siya.
2 araw lang. 2 araw lang.
2 araw lang.
Ako meron.
But ano yung
Ate
mga...
Nanette, may kwento.
Oh, sige, ako. Kasi I'm older than him. So, but as I told you in the beginning, these 2 older sisters of mine, nabully ako, di ba? So ako yung commander ng 3 boys. Okay? Since I'm number 3, the 3 boys are under me. They were my my army. So Francis, actually, siya yung pinakakamukha ko. Feeling niya kasi dati is parang ampun siya, hindi siya sure. Kasi tingnan mo, marami kaming mistiso, di ba, in our family. Pero sa pamilya namin, ako yung medyo brown, medyo fair. And wala pa sila Donna, sila ano. So yun, sabi niya, nung nakita niya ako, okay, kapatid ko nga sila. Okay, so he had an affiliation to how I look. But I was their commander. He's a very good follower when he has to follow. That's what I noticed with him. Then, as we grew older, actually, because he became more into politics, one thing I remember about him, even if he's my younger brother, is he's still really very protective, even if I'm the ate. Because we were having a hard time in Germany. I was struggling financially. With all my degrees and everything, I was there and I was in a job which was really difficult. And I was doing things which I said, I don't need a master's degree for this, but I'm doing it because I have to earn this small money. So, he was there. He came and visited me. He stayed for a few days in our house. He was already a senator then. Pero he said, Ate Nenette, I'll help you in whatever way I can. So he lent us money then without even expecting anything in return. And he didn't care when I would pay it back. And he said, I'll be here to support you. I believe in you. And don't forget, this is what Kiko is. He's an encourager. He says, whatever you're doing now, don't worry about it because you just remember who you are. Now he said, remember who you are. And when you're back, and he said, come back home because there are better jobs there for you. So I was really crying. And that's how he is. Even if he's my younger brother, I can lean on him. So that's what I like about him.
Yeah, just listening to it, nakakaya ka. Yung kinukwento niyan. Yes, it's really...
We can copy-paste that for several
yes.
issues in our life.
Yeah.
That's
It's actually... nakikita ko siya sa TV, formal siya pero sweet eh. Parang ganun eh. Parang formal na sweet when he answers questions about Frankie, when he answers questions about his siblings, yun ang nakikita ko eh. Formal pero alam mo sweet na tao, no? So we also heard your parents, most especially your dad, the late Mr. Donato Pangilinan, was involved as a community leader and found ways to expose all of you to make life better for others. Meron ganun palang upbringing ang mga Pangilinan siblings, no? Can you share a bit about that? And they said he was also Kuya Kiko's top campaign manager as a student leader. Ngayon si Ate Rita na, no? And his earlier days in government service as a councilor and first-time senator, very active noon as campaign manager. If he were alive, what do you think would he say about this VP run? Ang dami kong tanong, no? Any part of that, any part of that you can answer tungkol sa daddy ninyo and how his effect and how would he react to what's happening now? Any of you sa mga magkakapatid?
Definitely, he would be very supportive of Kiko. My mom nga said recently, she said, you know, if your dad were alive, he would be Kiko's campaign manager. You know, so we know that my brother misses him so much. We know kasi talagang malaki yung role ni Daddy. Because my father was very inspiring in the way he raised us. He's a hands-on dad. Diba sabi niyo parang saya-saya namin because my father was also very funny. And that is one thing that Kiko, you know, also is. You know, hindi lang niya masyadong pinapakita, but he's really funny.
Magaling mang punchline, mga
Na-notice ko nga eh, kahit di siya may comic touch palagi. Meron ako itatanong sa inyo, baka hindi ko pwedeng tanungin sa kanya. Bakit pagtanungin ko sa kanya, hindi niya sagutin ng diretso eh. When he, during that inaugural address, he became very emotional at many points of the speech, no? Nung pagkatapos niya mag-file. Bakit po? Ano kaya yun? Kung kaya niyong hulaan anong umaandar sa isip niya nun. Saka siya kasi, pag sinabi niya yun, very minimal eh. Hindi niya masyadong i-expound. But kayo, knowing him mula pa ng bata, ano sa palagay niyo?
Pasan niya yung daigdig eh. Feeling ko, pasan niya yung daigdig nung time na yun.
Feeling niya?
Bigat. Matigat.
Can I say something?
Yes, Miss Angeli. Please.
You know, first is we were all set on him becoming senator. You know, and everybody knows that Tito Soto is the uncle of Sharon. And like the second dad. And so I feel that it wasn't just the weight of the world, but like he said, he accepted this only because his wife and his family said, you go, Dad, you know, because he could have he could have made that decision a year or two ago, you know, because honestly, when they were saying that Lenny agreed to run, I even told everybody, it should be Kiko. I mean, we need to bring integrity back. We need to bring back some dignity to the highest government positions, because it's so shameless. You know, Maria Resa's very, very, very beautiful speech was really an echo of what was in Kiko's heart. And suddenly, he's faced with a daunting prospect of going against a relative who is very dear to his wife. So I feel at that point he was struggling with wanting to serve the country, but knowing that there was going to be a lot of pain involved, you know, a lot of personal sacrifices. And because my brother is a very emotional man, you know, and that's the reason Sharon fell in love with him. He was a professor at the Ateneo, and nag-isikol silang dalawa. And people were laughing because in the middle of teaching, you know, in the middle of a class, Sharon would text him on isikol, and then he would read it, and then, you know, and she got very enamored with his writing, because he's a very passionate and really engaging writer, you know. So there, I think that because there's so much inside him that he wanted to give, but it's so last minute, right? So the prospect of going against relatives,
So
the
difficult.
prospect
siguro.
of such a high mountain to climb, because others, we all know the other parties, they prepared 10 years ago, 6 years ago, and they've got billions in their, bank accounts, right? So we weren't able to prepare. So I just said one thing. David had 5 stones, but he only used one, and Goliath was conquered.
Yeah.
So that's just what I look at for my brother. So I'm just sharing these things with you. I think that's the reason he was so emotional. Maybe all of these
Yes.
things were like, what
Yeah.
a giant I'm facing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you really look at it, Lenny was never a leader, in the making before. She was really serving her husband, Jesse. And Jesse and Kiko were so close. So Lenny looks at Kiko as, somebody who's senior to her. So then, all these things are playing probably in his mind. Sorry, I shared a lot of stuff, but
But I can imagine, no?
Yes.
Sabay-sabay lahat 'yun while he was speaking. And
Just
when he
to,
was speaking,
just to share this last point, Ate Felici found this, Ate Fish.
Yeah.
I think it's like a, it
It's
shows
my-
how sacrificial,
Yeah.
sacrificial
yes,
nature.
how selfless.
My
Gonna-
brother, my mom had a wallet and she would keep, notes there from her kids and everything. And this is one of those that was in her wallet. And it's a letter.
Handwriting.
Yeah.
Di ba? Lasal.
Nasa lista eh. So, Kiko sharing his first paycheck to
Yeah.
honor my parents. And,
by the way,
show.
by the way, Gary said he will drop by later.
Okay.
Ay,
I
So,
said, can you just say hi to the Katiponeras and Ross?
Yeah, so
so for the sake of those who can't read it, nakalagay to dad and mom, haha, may tama pa. So my first paycheck, 50% to you and 50% to
Sharon.
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 Love you both. Your son, Francis. Yes.
I have a kwento. Si Kiko, sa lahat, he was the least vain.
Mm.
Among the 4, I think Anthony was the most vain, di ba?
Yeah.
Joseph was the most guapo, and Janjan was just there. Janjan was just there. Nobody minded him. So Kiko, when he was courting Sharon, dalawa lang yung belt niya. One black, one brown. Okay, this is really funny. Sira-sira pa yung brown. So, and then he had just a couple of pants and, he didn't really care about his clothes. So daddy went to Hong Kong and he spent over, at that time, that was a lot already, $1,000, he was saying, naku, hindi pwedeng si Kiko, nakakahiya naman. He's courting the megastar, tapos ang pangit-pangit ng damit. I'll never forget that he had one whole maleta full of clothes just for Kiko, and everybody was saying, what about us? Paano naman kami? But that's just how simple Kiko really is as a person. He really doesn't. So it's really Sharon who buys his clothes, ganyan.
Yes. Actually, Miss Angeli, talagang nakikita natin yon, no? Sa kahit anong appearance niya on TV, on social media, nakikita talaga yung pagiging simple. So maraming salamat po. We really wish that we can chit-chat some more. Ang sarap makipagkwentuhan sa mga sisters niya ni Senator Kiko. So maraming salamat, Miss Rita, Miss Felici, Miss Nenet, Miss Donna, Miss Angeli.
Thank you
So
very
just
much.
very quickly, bakit dapat si Kiko? Bakit dapat iboto? Siguro 1 or 2 words. Let's start with Miss Donna.
Prinsipyo at aksyon. Yan.
Okay, Miss Felici.
Serbisyo na may malasakit.
Yon, Miss Nenet.
Am I on mute or am I okay?
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay,
Can
sorry.
hear you.
One word. I would say, mahal talaga ang bayan.
Yon,
Mahal ng
Miss
bayan.
Rita.
Kiko's a farmer and he got into farming
Ang tunay na
because
magsasaka.
of his passion for he felt na yung pinaka-neglected sector sa Pilipinas,
Mm.
yung mga magsasaka at
Magsasaka.
mangingisda, all the food producers, sila pa yung pinakagutom.
Mm.
At ang feeling ko is, yun, yung compassion niya for the least.
Yeah.
The compassion niya for the ones who cannot, who cannot speak for themselves. Tapos now that gutom talaga ang problema ng 90% of yun ang kanyang, kaya alam niya kung paano ayusin yung gutom sa bayan ng 90% of our people.
Yes.
So I think that is why we need Kiko to be VP.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Ms. Rita. And lastly, Ms. Angeli.
They've said it all, pero siguro sa akin, pananampalataya at pamilya. Number one is at pamilya. Kasi, di ba, sa Bible yan eh, you make God first and He'll take care of the rest. At saka sa pamilya, yan ang foundation kasi ng ating bayan. From a family, you go to the barangay, then you go to the LGU, then you go, until you go to the national government. So yun, I think it's his faith and his family speak a lot about who he is.
Can I just correct Ron? Ron, I'm not a campaign manager, not at all. I'm not a campaign manager.
No,
I
si
just
Daddy,
help-
pero ngayon sa comms.
Yeah, I just
sa
help.
communication.
I help out on communications.
Yeah.
I have a day job, so
Ayan.
I need to earn money.
Yes, so
thank you.
maraming salamat po. And thank you
Thank you,
everyone for sharing the photos and giving us a glimpse of the more personal side of Senator Kiko. So ngayon, Sir Ron, I think ready na tayo para sa susunod na part ng ating programa. Ready ka na ba?
Kaya halina, ipakilala natin ang ating panahoning pagdangal para sa araw na ito. Pero sandali, parang hindi nga ako ready. Hanggang ngayon, nakikinig ako sa sisters, yung goosebumps ko, hindi pa buwababa. So
Oo
thank
nga
you very much. I talagang nasabi ni Miss Donna, ni Miss Rita, yung tungkol sa farmers, dun sa mga the least. At saka yung mga prinsipyo, I've heard that also from my friend dati. He was, mid-90s pa. Sabi niya, kung meron mang maayos dyan, yes, Senator Kiko. And I trusted him, but I didn't know why. And ngayon, si VP Lenny, a person I trust, siya rin ang pinili. So ngayon, I'd like to share their conviction, kahit di ako masyadong maalam pa tungkol kay Senator Kiko. I'd like to know him further in this kwentuhan at kumustahan. So mga kasama, manonood, mga taga-suporta, ang pinaka-maprinsipyo, pinaka-mapagkakatiwalaan, pinaka-matalino, pinaka-masipag, at higit sa lahat, pinaka-deserving na kandidato sa pagka-vice presidente ng Pilipinas sa darating na halalan sa 2022, walang iba kundi si #may pagmamalaki ko at #pinili ni Lenny, si Senator Francisco Kiko Pangilinan.
Yay.
Francisco.
Francis.
Senator Kiko.
Hi. Good afternoon to everyone.
Hi, good afternoon, Senator Kiko.
Magandang hapon po, Senator. Salamat sa pagpapaunlak sa amin.
I know, thank you. I should thank you. Thank you for taking time out from your Sundays to join this event. Of course, thank you to my sisters, my 2 younger sisters and my 3 older sisters. And to all of you who are present today, this afternoon, magandang hapon. Katipuneras would mean the Miriam and Ateneo and
Mary Nollers
UP.
din. Yes.
Yes, opo.
Yeah, oo. And so kasama ako pero Katipunero.
Yeah.
I spent
Yes.
a lot, when I think about it, pretty much mga 2 decades, almost 2 decades, no? I was traversing Katipunan. We would pick up my sisters in Marinol when we were in grade school, also high school, no? And then, of course, we went to college in UP. So again, we traversed Katipunan. So that must have been, and I lived close by to Katipunan in Rosa Alvero for 3 years. Again, Katipunan. But yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for this chance to exchange notes. I was listening in earlier, and mukhang nabisto na ako sa aking childhood. But there was one point that was being discussed about why Lenny picked me. I think because we have a common set of values. We value family. We value public service as a means of uplifting yung lives of others. I remember when Sharon and I were discussing right after I decided to take on the challenge and the offer of VP to run for VP. We had a parang conversation over dinner, and then she sort of affirmed na serving others is pretty much the only thing I know since I was 15. I was in the student council in LaSalle Green Hills High School, my 3rd and 4th year, and then I eventually also became student council in UP. So from being 15 until being 50, pretty much serving others is one. The other is ang biro nga ng daddy ko nung he one of the few times, or the first few times that he met Sharon, I brought her to our home, my dad and mom's place in Philam. Sabi ni daddy sa kanya, si daddy can be a very, how do you call it? Hindi naman obnoxious, but in your face type of dad, very domineering. So diniretso na si Sharon. Sabi niya, sigurado ka ba dito sa anak ko? Sabi ni Sharon naman, bakit naman po? And then daddy said, kasi ano yan eh, lahat ng kliyente niyan puro mga mahihirap. Sabi niya, abogado yan pero abonado din. So hindi marunong gumawa ng pera, abonado pa. So mga ganun. And Sharon's very, she has a way with how to go around these things. And she simply said, my dad is also very close to the mahihirap. Meaning the mayor, no? So that somehow put that in its place in that context. But yeah, ganon. And si Vice President Lenny, ganon din, abogado ng mga mahihirap. Ang kwento ko nga, at biniro pa sa akin ng daddy ko yun eh. Yung isang kliyente ko, manggagawa, rank and file worker, he was terminated kasi laging late, habitual tardiness. So pinag-aralan ko yung kaso, kaya pala siya habitually tardy kasi mahaba, iisa lang yung bounty clock doon sa eskwelahan. Mahaba yung pila. So pagdating nung oras niyang makapag-bounty clock, late na siya. So sabi ko, hindi naman tama ito, di ba? Kasalanan yun ng UP Manila, hindi niya kasalanan yun. Dapat yung tanggalin sa trabaho, yung hindi nagdagdag ng hindi nagdagdag ng boundary clock. No? But anyway, we that was a successful case. We got him reinstated, and yung bayad sa akin, isang bilaon ng biko. Kaya ang biro sa akin nga ng tatay ko, yun na nga.
Abogado.
Abogado, abonado, tsaka si Attorney Biko. Anyway.
Kiko din naman po, no?
Yeah, so that's, I guess, that, no? And then, when I sort of, we've been having pre-campaign sorties already with VP, so I would listen to her. I read her the book about, yung storybook, the children's book about her. She's also an introvert. Introverted like me, and lawyers for those who are marginalized, and also engaged in how do you call it, public sector, private sector interventions. No, in my first term in the Senate, I was chairman of the Committee on Housing, I saw the need to partner with NGOs, civil society.
Yes.
And we partnered with Gawad Kalinga in my first year. In fact, we allocated the largest amount of government funding for Gawad Kalinga homes, realizing that for us to be able to reshape communities, government must partner, must have synergy with the private sector.
Yes.
I did the same for the Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce school building program. We partnered with them and we built over 200 schools. At the classroom was half the cost of DPWH classrooms. No? Again, partnership of the private sector and government. We also did a program with PCCI, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, allocating funds for, together with the DTI, my office, and the PCCI, identifying small and medium enterprises that needed support. Again, it's synergy of the private sector and government. And that's pretty much what the Vice President did in her 5.5 years as Vice President. She partnered with the private sector so that she could get her Angat Buhay programs in place. So, and that's probably why in the last 5.5 years, she was chairperson of the Liberal Party. I was party president, and we never really had any major disagreements. No? We pretty much were aligned. And ang biro ko nga sa kanya, ma'am, because I was much closer to Jessie. No? We ran together in 1988, although I didn't meet him then. I was in the city council in Quezon City. He was the mayor of Naga, but he was already a beacon of good governance, no, in his first term. And kaming mga batang mambabatas at batang mga local officials, we looked up to him. No? So ang biro ko nga kay ma'am, alam nyo, ma'am, meaning VP Lenny, sabi ko, ma'am, alam nyo ba, and si Jessie pala, hindi alam ng marami, well, a big fan of Sharon. No? He was a Sharonian through and through. And
Yes.
And my gifts nga to him would always be yung mga CD.
The CD.
Yeah, which he played in his ano, no? And he was always he probably, we had a number of meetings at home in Wakwak, and Jessie would come. Maybe kung 5, 6 o 7 beses nakapunta na siya sa bahay. At tuwang-tuwa siya pag nakikita niya yung mga well, of course si Sharon, but yung mas nakikita niya doon yung mga bata. No? So lagi siya natutuwa. Anyway, so sabi ko kay VP Lenny, ma'am, alam niyo ba, bago ho ako naging Sharon yan, Jessinian ako. Diba? I was a big fan of Jesse Robredo because of his leadership. No, he was able to transform Naga from a 4th class to a 1st class city, and doing it, by way of good governance and inspiring citizens to take part in governance. Pero sabi ko, pero ngayon, ma'am, hindi lang po ako Jessinian at Sharonian. That was her first year as Vice President. Leninian din ako, ma'am.
Leninian.
So it's interesting how that all fell into place. And so when she asked me to consider running, that wasn't my plan originally, but I believe she was the most qualified. I believe that we share the same set of values and principles, and I believe that our country deserved to have her as our president. And so I set aside my own plans, even if we were already doing well in the surveys for re-election, which was our plan, and that's why I'm here.
Ayan. So, Senator Kiko, maraming salamat sa introduction, no? Actually, meron po may ilang mga katanungan dito na base rin sa core values ng Miriam College na truth, peace, justice, at of course, yung importansya sa kalikasan. So ngayon si Sir Ron, meron kang mga tanong dyan.
May kinalaman sa truth. Siguro may kinalaman sa issue ng fake news at disinformation. Senator Kiko, alam natin ngayon na hindi na bago sa padinig natin yung fake news at marami nabibiktima ng fake news. Alam ko, nabiktima na rin kayo nito. Paano nyo hinarap ang sitwasyong yon? At saka bilang pangkaraniwang tao, paano po kaya susolusyonan ng problema o isyung ito? Parang laganap na eh. May magagawa pa ba tayo? Dami ko pong tanong, bahala po kayo paano yung sagutin.
Well, we're
Kasi total
actually
po
we're actually conducting hearings now.
Oh.
Senator Drilon and I filed a resolution to look into, our criminal laws and cybercrime laws because of disinformation. In the last several weeks, for example, merong nameke na bumili ng halos 100,000 pisong halaga. Una kay Vice President, the following day sa akin tsaka kay Senator Ontiveros. So ginagamit yung technology at yung social media sites and yung mga, 'di ba, digital apps para lokohin ng tao. So that happened, no? In the middle of the Farmally hearings, for example, there was a hacking of Senator Gordon's website as well as the Senate website, no? So really, it's becoming a serious cause for concern, and it's an open secret that child trafficking, child prostitution is enabled by private accounts on Facebook or Twitter and even Snapchat, no? So talagang, a lot of criminality is enabled because of these social media platforms. So we're doing a hearing, and one is, we're looking at, for example, requiring identities to be divulged. Fake. You can come up with an anonymous account. That's fine, but the platforms, for example, must have the real person who wants to remain anonymous on file, so that if there are defamatory criminal activity, then the social media sites should be able to point to these anonymous accounts because they are registered under real persons. So your freedom to remain anonymous is there, but once you cross the line, and start making, sabi nga nila, freedom of speech is not absolute, diba? And also what is protected is freedom of information, not freedom of disinformation. So we're looking at these interventions. Among others, we're also challenging corporate, the corporate world, the biggest spenders of digital ad buys, to be more vigilant and maybe instruct their media agencies that put all these ads in all these sites to stay away from maybe a negative list of sites that are known to spread disinformation. For example, I'd like to think, a company like Jollibee or McDonald's wouldn't want their ads coming out in a site wherein I am accused of beating up my wife, diba? Which is obviously false, among other things, diba? So that too is, it's not just the trolls. Well, that is one aspect. It's also the whole corporate infrastructure, as well as ad agency executives who are all involved in one way or another in enabling this information. So it has to be a multi-sectoral approach. Government will do its share. The big platforms must do its share. Citizens must be vigilant, and corporate Philippines must also look at its responsibility.
So talagang it's really a collective effort. Hindi lang siya, it's not just the government, no? Kailangan maging aktibo din ang bawat isa sa talagang paghinto ng mga pag-spread ng fake news. Ngayon, Senator Kiko, sige po. Sige, punta naman po tayo sa issue ng terorismo. So Senator Kiko, isa sa mga matinding problema ng ating bansa ang terorismo. Maaari niyo po bang maibahagi sa amin ang inyong pananaw o paniniwala tungkol sa isyung ito? Kaya ba natin talaga tapusin ang issue ng terorismo?
Well, I think ultimately yung extremism and radicalism is born out of, a sense of being left out, being neglected and abandoned. No? Kasi pag maganda ang buhay, pag may kinikita, maayos ang ekonomiya, yung extremism mawawalan ng saysay, no? So really, but it's a combination. It's a combination of interventions, but definitely you can't have a military, purely military approach. For example, yung Moro Islamic Liberation Front, we just passed, the BARM law
The barn.
2 years ago or 3 years ago. And we allocated actually 70 billion pesos. That's the peace dividends for the autonomous region.
Yes.
So I think the new template really is, yes, we have to have a stronger, more capable military that will address external as well as internal threats. But that alone will not be enough. It really has to be a whole of nation approach. It's an overused term, and we already have a template. The BARM is an example of the way forward in terms of addressing grievances and peace. The same with the MNLF peace talks with Ramos in the 90s. Very aggressive on peace negotiations. So I think it's a combination, yes, of strengthening our armed forces for both external and internal threats, but primarily at this point external, but at the same time addressing the core issues and the root problems that allow for social unrest, and extremism to become, to prevail, and to spread.
Senator Kiko, thank you for that. Speaking of other interventions besides military, I'd like to ask about education and the pandemic because marami po
Yes.
sa amin, ako po teacher po ako at marami sa amin teacher dito. So ang edukasyon po ay napaka-importante. Marami sa ngayon habang pandemya napektuhan ng pag-aaral sa iba't ibang paraan. Marami na rin ang napahinto sa pag-aaral dahil sa kakulangan ng mga kagamitan at kakayahan para makipagsabayan sa mga online classes. Ano po sa tingin nyo ang magiging mabisang panlaban natin sa ganitong problema? Mayroon po ba kayong reforma o programa o
Well, yes.
balak para
Well,
sa kabataan at edukasyon? Sige, dapat po.
First, I think we really have to find a more proactive, a more how do you call it, responsive education bureaucracy. I do not subscribe to this insistence on online classes, especially in areas wherein COVID has already been more or less addressed, or in areas where there are no cases. It can't be a one-size-fits all intervention. For every year of not being in school, sabi nga nila, is 2 years learning loss. No? Itong online na hindi face-to-face classes, talagang sabi nila 1 year, di ba, of this kind of setup of no face-to-face classes will result in 2 years of learning loss. So we really are facing an education crisis. In the budget, for example, the budget last year, when we were talking about face-to-face classes, we were wondering why are you proposing, and this was 1 year ago, why is the DepEd proposing 2,000 pilot areas? I mean, you can, di ba, and the whole bureaucracy being mobilized for 2,000. Why don't you start with 500 or 200 just to get it going so that you already know what the gaps are, so that you can immediately, get the feel of hybrid classes. Wala, the bureaucracy was just so slow. They finally started with, if I'm not mistaken, 300, 200, 300. When anyway, medyo makupad. And the crisis in education was already there even before the pandemic. These tests were actually conducted kung saan tayo kulelat prior to COVID. Lumabas na lang yan nung panahon na ng COVID. And talagang, ang ating performance in math and science, 9 out of 10 of our elementary students are unable to understand what they read, the material, and we're really facing an education crisis. And that needs proactive interventions. Immediately sa COVID, for example, we really have to provide them with the necessary equipment so that they can attend to online classes, and also budgetary support for this, so that they can also, that the kids should have allowances from government for as basic as load, di ba? Walang load. Diba? So, and then of course you transition into a hybrid. Hindi pa pwedeng one size fits all. And this is what VP Lenny has been working on. She created community hubs, for example, in areas wherein mahina yung internet, may modules. So to provide support, she created networks wherein certain communities have the benefit of a community hub, wherein teachers, volunteer tutors are there. So may puntahan yung mga magulang, may puntahan yung mga hindi yung, 'di ba, yung ganitong parang sige, basta DepEd top down, then ganyan, 'di ba? And she's been able to do this and it works, you know. And then of course providing gadgets for our to be able to address hybrid learning. No? You have families that share one cell phone.
Yes.
So we've allocated actually and identified about 31 billion for gadgets for students, 68 billion for education ayuda, among others, no? Para ma-address immediately itong current challenges of a hybrid online classes.
Thank you, Senator Kiko. No? So kung talagang, ang naririnig ko talaga, no, kung pagka may problema, may solusyon. At yung
Yes.
solusyon na yun, hindi siya one size fits all. Napaka-comprehensive niya at talagang may partnership with the community at saka na-address talaga yung problema, yung root cause ng problema.
And,
So ngayon,
and the research shows, when the community, the parents are involved, learning improves considerably among young children.
Yeah, so
Yes,
maraming
yes.
salamat po doon. So ngayon, Senator Kiko, punta naman tayo sa issue ng environment, agriculture, and job security. So isa ho sa core values ng Miriam College ay yung kalikasan, no? Alam ko po na ilan sa advokasya nyo ay ang kalikasan at agrikultura. Karamihan o marami sa kasalukuyan na magsasaka, mangingisda, at iba pang, may mga kabuhayan. Ang nawala actually yung kabuhayan nila, lalong-lalo na ngayong pandemya. Ano po ba yung mga programa nyo dito? Pwede nyo po bang i-share sa amin? Ano po ba yung mga plano in the pipelines para mabigyan ng solusyon itong issue na to? Kasi talagang napakalaki pong issue, no? Parang nung job security dahil nga po sa sitwasyon natin ngayon.
Yes, the Tropa team, no? Robredo Pangilinan team, actually we laid down a COVID response that includes kalayaan laban sa gutom. No? Really, hunger has been exacerbated by joblessness, and COVID. No? Nawalan ng trabaho, nawalan ng hanap buhay, at talagang walang pinagkakakitaan. No? So we've actually identified 500 billion, kasama na dun yung nabanggit ko kaninang education interventions in the 2021 budget, that by July 1 will be available. We just have to realign them to address number one, ayuda, direct ayuda for our kababayans in lockdown areas. That's about 216 billion. No? Ayuda also for small and medium enterprises who are providing jobs. And syempre, when you have a job, then you have money, you have income, and then therefore you can buy food. No? It's 100 billion. This government in the last year allocated 10 billion for stimulus to small and medium. That's a pittance. It only served less than 100,000 small and medium enterprises when we have 1.5 million. No, so really, we have to address that. For farmers, the biggest job loss actually is in agriculture. Of the 3.4 million losses in jobs in 2020, 1.7 came from farming, agriculture. So talagang, well, the Vice President, and we discussed this also, believes that we have to double the agriculture budget in the first term, so that this intervention will really address itong joblessness, no, and unemployment. And to address hunger, really, ultimately, food security is about securing your farmers and your fisher folk. Because when you secure them, they will be able to increase their productivity. If their productivity increases, they will maengganyo yan magtanim dahil alam nila hindi sila babaratin, may suporta. Dadami ang ani. Pag dumami ang ani at dumami ang karne, dumami ang gulay, dumami ang bigas, di bababa ang presyo ng pagkain. Diba? Mawawala na ang gutom.
Yes.
So these are the interventions that we feel are necessary. And immediately, and this is because of the law that we passed in 2019, wherein LGUs and national government can now, without having to go through the cumbersome public bidding, how can you get farmers to undertake public bidding? They have to post in field trips, they have to have all these, diba? And they have to compete with the traders. Crazy, diba? It doesn't work.
Mahirap, masyadong mahirap.
So we exempted them from the public bidding so that governments can directly buy from them. And in 2019 na batas yan, last year, 2020, about close to 3 billion pesos worth of agricultural products were purchased by 400 plus LGUs directly sa farmers. But here's the thing, that's only 400 LGUs. There are 1,600. So this has to be, the new normal for our LGUs and our NGAs, NGA national government. DSWD has billions for supplemental feeding. It has billions for relief packs, which includes rice. All these billions must now be directed to the purchase directly sa farmers and fisher folk. Bring it to their pockets so that they, get inspired. So there are a lot, and the money is already there. It's just not being. So by July 1, we should be able to ensure itong pondo na nandyan na dapat mapunta sa mga magsasaka at mangingisda para maengganyo sila, madadagdagan ng trabaho, gaganda ang kanilang kita, gaganda pa ang kanilang ani.
Yes. Maraming salamat po,
Maraming salamat po,
Kiko.
Senator Kiko. Senator Kiko, marami kaming hinandang tanong ni Mirma at pero marami ring mga gusto magtanong. Marami po tayo dito nakasali sa Zoom meeting, nasa chat box, nasa FB Live. So ngayon po, puno-puno po ng impormasyon, pakabuluhan, lalo na sa panahon ng pangyayari sa kasalukuyan ating diskusyon. Ngayon naman, mayroon tayong mga estudyante mula sa Miriam College na ibig lumahok sa kwentuhan. Sila na muna, no? Sa kwentuhan natin, makapagtanong ng diretso kay Senator Kiko.
Yan, tama yan. So, Sir Ron, unahin natin, no? Una nating tatawagin ay si Gianna Soriano, isang fourth-year student ng Early Childhood Development and also the Editor-in-Chief ng Kiro Publication. So, Gianna, magandang hapon sa'yo. Nandito ka na ba? Hello, Gianna.
Hello po, magandang hapon po. Sorry po, hindi ako naka-background kasi hindi po kaya ng aking laptop po. Pero thank you po so much po. Ang dami ko pong natututunan po habang nagsasalita po kayo, especially po about yung sa terrorismo po na sinasabi niyo po. About how extremism and radicalism was born when people feel left out po. Very touching po yun sa akin. Tapos may tanong po ako about yung when it comes po to fake news, kasi yun nga po, fake news po, very rampant po. I wanted to ask po, what do you want po from students po specifically po? Parang anong pwede po namin maggawa para tulungan po kayo during this campaigning, yung during po approaching voting season po and everything?
Well, I continue to believe that between, lies and the truth, the truth will resonate, no, and lies will eventually will fall flat, when confronted with the truth. So it's really a challenge how to get the truth out there. the information out there. So I think, if you want to support VP Lenny and myself, and thank you if you want to do so. I remember I visited South Africa, the Democratic Party in South Africa. Very interesting. Even the bodeguero that worked for the party knew the CV of their candidate, knew the history of the party, etc. So the information was down, cascaded, So if you're a katropa or a kakamping, then you should, get the information, imbibe it, so that you can convince others. Kasi otherwise, pag tinanong sa'yo, totoo ba si Senator Kiko? Walang batas niya, hindi mo alam. Teka, alamin ko muna. Di doon pa lang sasabihin na nung nagtatanong sa'yo, baka nga totoo yung kasi yung na wala siyang nagawa. Kasi yung supporter niya hindi alam eh. Diba? We are, diba? If we are supporters, we represent also, diba? Those we are supporting, and critical yan. So the youth should fight, volunteer. We have a group called Digital Warriors. You can volunteer in that regard and spread the truth. Sabi ko nga, we cannot become the monsters we want to slay. Diba? We cannot become the dragons we wish to defeat. So in the face of trolling, let us let out the truth. Let us rebut with the truth. So the young people who are the most savvy, are really in the position, to kayo rin ang nakakaalam eh. Kami mas mabali yung henerasyon namin, mas madaling lokohin sa fake news kasi hindi kami sanay sa mga ganyang technology, pero kayo alam na alam ninyo. So gamitin ninyo yung ganyang kapasidad. Spread the truth. Sabi nila, a lie told 1,000 times, diba, becomes the truth. So how do we battle that? Then let's tell the truth 1,000 times. Diba? And I'm sure that will resonate even more. One more thing siguro, an experience halimbawa in Russia, in France, when they found out, they were tracking na maraming lumalabas na parang anti-NATO dun sa eleksyon ni Macron. You know what the Macron camp did? They just, if the Russian influence trolling were doing 100 an hour, they decided to do 10,000 an hour. They buried, they buried the disinformation. So hopefully, there are 5 million new registrants, first-time voters. Can you imagine if we get even just 10% of them to become social media warriors, diba? Or even 5%, 200,000 strong social media warriors. We can turn things upside down. Sabi nga nila, you give me 60 committed activists, and I will turn the country upside down. So if you have 100,000, diba? All the more.
Sige po, thank you po so much.
And thank you for that, Gianna. Thank you for asking that question. Tanong din niya ng mga anak ko mga bagong botante rin yung mga anak ko Ano bang pwede namin gawin? Kasi hindi nila alam. So ngayon naman, let me welcome another student. We have here Sofia Merced Adasa, third-year international studies student at external vice president siya ng IS Society. Hello, Sofia.
Hello po, good afternoon po. Magandang hapon po, Senator Kiko, and magandang hapon rin po to your sisters, and super na-appreciate ko po yung stories na nabigay and na-share niyo po kanina. Super enlightening po, and I feel like I got to know you better po as my candidate for this coming election. So my question po, knowing that you were once an activist and you were active po in your youth, and today po the word activism is have been labeled as negative, as terrorist, ganun po. So what is your take po on that po, and how can we further, as a youth po, how can we further engage to our communities po sustainably, and just like what you did po in your early years?
Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist by the apartheid government, diba? Sabi nga nila, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. No, and when I was a student leader and activist, we were called names too. So every generation will have its share of this kind of challenges, no. But in the end, it's really, what do you believe in, di ba? Sabi nga, di ba? What do you stand for? Di ba? If you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything, ika nga, di ba? So yun. So hindi biro, di ba? You will face challenges if you're an activist. You will face these what I used to call occupational hazards. During the Marcos regime as a student leader, there were times I couldn't go home because we would get information that there will be a crackdown of activists, and arrests would be done. My dad, in our home in Antipolo, he made he's a contractor, construction. He builds homes. He made a collapsible cabinet, meaning the floor of the cabinet would collapse into a parang bababa ako doon, no, may ladder, tapos papunta doon sa kalye para makatakas in the event na ako'y puntahan at arrestuhin. So every generation will have its share of challenges, but in the end, really, you just have to, diba? Sabi ko nga, this is the worst economic crisis in 40 years, the worst health crisis in 100 years, Sophia. And one day you will have a family of your own. You will have children, maybe a son, maybe, or a daughter, Sophia the second. And then Sophia will ask you, "Mommy, during the worst health crisis in the country's history and the worst economic crisis in 50 years, what were you doing?"
Wow.
You will have to decide what to answer, right? And I'd like to think maybe one day you'll tell them, anak, there was this politician. I attended a Zoom. I forget his name now, but he challenged us to make a stand, and we did. And that's why the country is in a better place now, because more of us decided enough is enough. We want our country back, and we will fight for it with all our might and make things right.
Yes. Yan. Maraming salamat, Sofia. Maraming salamat, Senator Kiko. Huwag nang magpatumpik-tumpik. Tayo na tumindig. Yun yung gusto kong sabihin. Talagang we need to stand up. Maraming salamat sa iyong katanungan.
The root
Ngayon
word of
naman,
activism. The root
Yes.
word of activism is act. So, kumilos tayo. Yeah.
Tama. So, ngayon naman makikinig tayo kay Stephanie Joy Flores, isang first-year student taking up early childhood education, at siya ay internal vice president ng first-year council ng Miriam College. So, magandang hapon sa iyo, Stephanie.
Magandang hapon po, magandang hapon Senator Kiko at saka sa mga kapatid niyo po. Maraming salamat po at napaunlakan niyo yung eto pong event na to. Gusto ko lang pong itanong kung ano po yung mga advokasya nyo para sa mga kababaihan at sa mga kapatid nating LGBTQ. Yun lang po, thank you.
Well, ako, I go by the tenet, first and foremost, na lahat tayo anak ng Diyos. No? At lahat tayo mahal ng Diyos. And coming from that perspective, I believe in respect, for the rights of others, and that's why, yung pagrespeto sa karapatan ng ibang tao ay napakahalaga. In fact, I was a human rights lawyer before I became a senator. And we had a number of cases that we collaborated with Attorney Chel Joc. Now, as to our programs sa kababaihan, we actually encourage, in our interventions sa farming and pagsasaka, dapat malaki ang papel ng women farmers, sa enterprise development. In fact, meron kaming isang sagip-saka beneficiary, na and the data will show, na nung sumama na yung misis doon sa kooperatiba kasama ng mister, mas naging maayos yung gastusin ng mga kinikita. Dati kasi napupunta sa sugal. Pagka maganda ang ani, nandun na sa sabungan. Hindi ba? Paglalaki, I mean, hindi lahat, pero may ganung ano, no? Pero pagka yung babae na ang involved dun sa yung management ng enterprise, aba, napupunta yung pondo, yung kita sa pagkain na mas maayos para sa mga anak, bumabalik dun sa yung enterprise, and so forth and so on. So women, if more women are involved in farm enterprise and entrepreneurship, I think the greater the chances of success. And that's been part of our advocacy. I guess I grew up with never thinking in my entire growing up years that women were more inferior, because I had 3 ates who ordered me around. So, in fact, I would think growing up, I thought they were the superior gender kasi inuutusan kami lagi. So kami naman sunod ng sunod. So
we are.
So, and they were all leaders. I think that's one thing about my dad and my mom. They were very active in student leaders in their college days, and they imbibed that that you have to be involved, you have to participate, you have to use your talents and your skills and lead, di ba, in organizations. Sabi ko nga, my father and my mother, they believed in me more than I believed in myself, and that gave me, the apog, they call it, the confidence, di ba, to face the challenges, and up until today. So going back, that would be our advocacies, mutual respect and trust, and of course, get more women involved in leadership roles, whether in farming, whether as youth leaders, etc. And I think the country will be better run, and progress will be swifter.
Marami pong salamat, Senator Kiko.
Maraming salamat din sa iyo, Stephanie. Tama-tama, kanina hindi ko alam kung narinig na ni Senator Kiko yung kwento ni Donna bago ko po kayo pumasok, na you were really very empowering, may respeto, kahit na bilang kapatid, that experience when she was feeling very low. And tama yung mga ate niyo. Respeto nga, mabait, marespeto po kayo. Ano mabait. Okay, maraming salamat sa mga estudyante ng Miriam College. Ngayon naman, let's call our friends from Katipuneras for Lenny to help us read the comments and questions from our Facebook Live and Zoom chat box. So ang nasa Facebook Live natin ng Katipuneras for Lenny ay si Ria. Ria, are you there?
Yes,
Kumusta?
Ron.
Okay, kumusta? Kumusta ba sa FB Live?
Aktibong-aktibo sa FB Live. Good afternoon po, Senator Kiko, at saka sa pamilya nyo. Magandang hapon
We used to have a very, very terror teacher na Ares Pakuchaga in UP.
Opo, Spanish teacher po.
Yes, Spanish.
Yes po, lola po ng asawa ko. Ako po, hindi ako terror.
Oo. Remember that name, and I avoided that name kasi required pa yung Spanish nun eh.
Hindi po ako terror. Para sa mga nanonood ng magulang ng mga estudyante ko, mabait po ako. Senator Kiko, inuulan po ng hearts at likes yung Facebook natin. Marami pong katanungan at saka mga comments, lalong-lalo na yung nag-a-affirm nung binanggit nyo yung pag-prioritize at pagpapahalaga sa mga magsasaka at sa mga mangingisda, no? So those two sectors. Meron din tayong 2 tanong. Actually madami, pero dahil kulang tayo sa oras, may 2 tanong akong napiling gusto kong banggitin sa inyo. Galing po kay Pearl Erasmo. Tinatanong niya po, Senator, if you and VP Lenny win, what are the top 3 government departments would you like to lead, or would you be interested to lead, and why po?
Well, first we have to win. So before we discuss what cabinet post, no? Second, we haven't discussed this with the Vice President, but I would assume, no, my experience in the agriculture and food security sector, I can play a key role there, because really hunger is prevalent. It's still a a major issue. Stunting because of lack of nutrition, is also a major concern. So food security is really up and up in terms of the agenda that we need to address. Again, I will say, unless you secure your farmers and your fisher folk, diba, you will never secure your food. And anyone, diba, Management 101, what is the number one resource? It's your people. And where are our farmers? Diba? Mahihirap. Average age is about 56 years old. Wala nang gustong magsaka, di ba? Kasi nga vow of poverty ang sakahan. We are we are not investing in agriculture as we ought to. I mean, let's invest in public infrastructure, importante 'yun. Pero if you don't invest in agriculture, di ba? Gutom ang kapalit, di ba? Yung semento hindi mo naman makakain 'yun eh. I mean, infrastructure is okay, it's great, it will create jobs, etc. But we must be able to spend more in agriculture. So that's the area we'd like to see some real, no nonsense progress, and that's why the call that we will double the budget of agriculture in the first year is doable, and it has to be done. Sabi nga ni Frankie when she was 9 years old, and I think this is where I'm coming from also, na tinanong sa akin yan, what inspires you? Who inspires you? Sabi niya, we must treat our farmers like our parents, because they're the ones who feed us. And when I thought about that, only a 9-year-old would think of it that way. But how do we treat our farmers? Diba? We look down upon our farmers collectively. We don't see their worth. We don't recognize them. Diba? We don't thank them. They just happen to be there, and really in the end, what kind of parent what kind of child will abandon, will neglect, will take for granted, yung magulang ng bansa, mga magulang ng bansa, yung mga nagpapakain sa bansa, hindi siya tama. And I will end with this, very quickly. I met Mang Romeo in 2016. He was a rice farmer. And I asked him how old he was. He was 73 years old. He was still involved in our meetings. And I asked him, ilang taon ho kayo nag-umpisa magsaka? He said 12. So 61 years, more than 6 decades, he has been feeding the country. And the tragedy and the unjustness of it all is that he is still farming at 73 and he is still poor. So any Christian, if you ask me, worthy of being called Christian, should not sit still and accept this as a given. Should fight to change this injustice. And that's why I'm, in the last 10 years, I've been advocating for our farmers and our fisher folk, because precisely it's the right thing to do. It's the just thing to do. And finally, hopefully, the next generation, sina Stephanie, sina Sophia, will champion, and give our farmers and our fisher folk the recognition and the respect that they so richly deserve but have continued to be deprived of. That is not right. We have to correct that.
Thank you po, Senator Kiko. I think yung nagtanong po si Ms. Pearl Erasmo, parang alam niya po siguro yata yung isasagot niyo kasi siya rin po yung nagbansag ng bagong hashtag kanina nung binabanggit ng mga kapatid niyo po yung kwento tungkol sa Biko. So sabi niya po, tamang-tama, hashtag Lenny Lugaw, hashtag Biko ni Kiko. So tamang-tama po yung sagot niyo, kasi hunger. Gusto next, second question po, last question from FB, galing po kay Sir Jerry Jurisprudencia. Senator Kiko, what specific program could bridge the relationship between Christian Filipinos, Muslim Filipino communities, and even the IP communities po? Well,
really, first we must have, the mindset, the paradigm of inclusiveness always. Hindi pa pwedeng, di ba, hindi inclusive, hindi pa pwedeng exclusive. So there has to be continuous dialogue, interaction, interventions that will precisely enhance inclusivity. Dapat ano yun, top of mind yun. Hindi pwedeng ano yan, yung as an afterthought. No? It has to be. Sabi ko nga, if you believe in democracy, you have to live it. Di ba? So if you believe in mutual respect, then you have to live it. You have to show it in your interventions and your programs. So, and I think, it has to be a mechanism from the grassroots up to the top levels. Inclusivity has to be a mantra, so that there is really greater respect for one another and recognition of each other's roles, the IPs. Talagang again, in the end, sabi nga ni Vice President Lenny, madaling mangako, di ba? But tingnan natin yung track record, di ba? Madaling mangako na itong gagawin natin, etc. But look at the track record. And I believe Vice President Lenny has walked, not just talked the talk, but also walked the walk. And I'd like to think, I'm not the type kasi who will ipal. I just quietly work. But I'd like to think in the last, my record will also show that we have walked the walk in terms of inclusivity and participation of the broader, stakeholder politics is something that I hold dear and value because, really in the end, if you want change, you must get citizens multi-sectoral participating in the effort. It doesn't work na yung gobyerno ang kikilos tapos manunood lang. In fact, this is my last point, no? We are going around the country establishing Robredo People's Councils. Why? Akala siguro nila pagtapos ng eleksyon, tapos na. No. We are going to institutionalize those councils as part of governance. They did that in Naga, and we'd like to see that happening throughout the country.
Thank you very much, Senator Kiko. Ron, okay na ako.
Thank you very much, Ria. Ako, bukang bibig talaga yung People's Council na yan. Narinig ko, Senator Kiko. Ngayon naman, meron tayo sa Zoom chat box. Nabuti lang, hindi ako in charge. Napakarami rin. Nandun kasama natin ang ating katipunera na si Rosie. Rosie, kumusta ba ang chat box? Ikaw na nag-distill dyan kung ano ba.
Good afternoon po, Senator Kiko. Good afternoon pa, 5:30 pa lang. So,
good afternoon, Rosie.
Po. Yes po. Madami kong comments. Actually, a lot of positive ones. Meron pong mga nabanggit din ni Carla kanina yung biko ni Kiko. So kung may lugaw ni Kiko, baka pwede rin nga tayo magsimula ng biko ni Kiko. Good job.
Matutuwa ang rice farmers dyan kasi puro bigas yun eh.
Tama. Masusuportahan po sila talaga doon. So madami din pong na-impress doon sa mga stories na kunento kanina ng inyong mga kapatid, na may mga naiyak pa, kami rin po, naiyak din po sa mga kwento ninyo kanina. And meron din po kanina nagbanggit na simula ho nung freshman daw po siya, nung student council president daw po kayo in UP Diliman, she has already been impressed with you during that time pa rin po until now. And she actually cried daw po when VP Lenny announced that you will be her running mate. And that's from Cindy De Jesus.
Cindy cried. Pareho pala kami.
Opo, madami ho talagang naiyak nung panahon na yon, I'm sure. So, meron pong mga madaming tanong, pero I'll focus on one na lang po para focus na lang tayo sa isang tanong na I'm sure a lot also want to ask. So it's something that has to do with our West Philippine Sea, so our sovereignty. So it's mainly, aside from filing diplomatic protest after protest, how do we protect and ensure our sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea? China says dialogue, but this has not prevented their militia and Coast Guard ships from harassing our fishermen and outright occupying our maritime territory by Toby Reloza po na question. So
yes, that's a very good question, because we really, we're talking about 300,000 square kilometers of waters dito sa West Philippine Sea. That is part of our exclusive economic zone. the 300,000 square kilometers is actually as large as the land area already of the Philippines. Ganong kalaki ang pinag-uusapang teritoryo. Hindi natin pwedeng i-give up yan. We will have to fight tooth and nail. But fight meaning hindi gera. Vietnam has asserted its territorial waters and exclusive economic zone. Indonesia has. In fact, Indonesia has been more aggressive. They actually blow up Chinese fishing vessels that encroach on their waters. But was there war? No. In fact, you'll be surprised. Vietnam has more Chinese investments, development aid than the Philippines. Tayo sunod-sunuran. Pagka sunod-sunuran, ikaw ang ihuhuling irespeto. Di ba? Yung mga sunod-sunuran at nakayuko at sumisipsip, yun ang unang hindi bibigyan ng respeto. Yung mga naninindigan at may respeto sa sarili, yun din ang re-respetuhin. And that's why Vietnam has more Chinese official development aid than the Philippines, because they fight for themselves. So war is a false, how do you call it? It's a false dichotomy that if you assert your sovereign rights, it'll lead to war. Of course not. That's a cop out. It's an excuse not to act. In the meantime, we have to assert, and we have to get partners and allies. When the fishing vessel, our fishing vessel was the supply was water cannon, Australia spoke out, Japan spoke out, the US spoke out. So we have to strengthen our linkages with the international community. ASEAN, Vietnam is concerned about what's happening. Indonesia is, let's come together, let's talk. There's, sabi nga nila, mas marami, mas malakas. Pag-iisa ka lang na nakikipagkwentuhan o nakikipag-usap at nagpo-protesta, mahina. Diba? So these are interventions that can be done. The diplomatic and political, how do you call it, path to strengthening our claim. Actually, the award, hindi na claim, the award, the arbitral ruling in our favor is the path to go.
All right. So maraming salamat po. Miss Rosie, thank you also.
Thank you po.
Thank you so much, Senator Kiko. So maraming salamat sa mga nagbigay ng komento at ng pagbati sa Facebook Live natin, and of course dito rin sa Zoom. Sir Ron,
Senator Kiko, I really wish we had more time. I really wish we had more time. Ngayon lang, listening to you, I realized that you really are not Epal. Kasi this experience of listening to you is so unique. It's so rare. It's so empowering. It's so inspiring. Sana, lahat na nakikinig sa inyo, imbitahan niyo Senator Kiko and listen to him. He needs to tell his stories and his sisters too. But before we go, can you share with us some words on what we can do to help you with the campaign po? Okay. At
Yes,
ano
yes.
po bang dapat bantaan, ang dapat namin gawin sa darating na eleksyon kung meron man po?
Yes, every vote will count. Every effort will be precious. We're facing an uphill battle. We're behind in the polling, but it's still early. There is still time to reach out. But everyone must do his or her share. Tinanong dito, how do you plan to reach out to the huge number of voters belonging to the Class D and E who sadly have no access to social media? Well, that's where provincial radio ads as well as TV ads still play a critical role. We hope to be able to raise enough resources to be able to reach out to them. But I think, the person-to-person engagement is also very important. Naniniwala kami na marami because of fake news ay nasisway ng fake news, pero pagka kinausap at binigyan ng mas magandang picture kasama ang katotohanan ay pwedeng mag-sway yan. Today lamang sila, no? But really in the last several elections, yung mga nangunguna nung umpisa talo. In 2004 ang nangunguna nun si Senator Rocco. In 2010, ang nangunguna nun, Binay and then Grace Po. Di ba? Talo. In 2016, ang nangunguna nun was, 2010 pala was Manny Villar. 2016, di ba? Was Grace Po. Before that, Binay, talo. So yung mga lamang ngayon, hindi ibig sabihin hindi magbabago ang isip ng mga botante. Pero paano natin babaguhin yung isip ng botante? Kinakailangan natin kausapin. Kinakailangan natin katukin yung mga pinto. I remember when I was during the Marcos dictatorship, yung snap election, merong mga pulong bahay. Kumakatok talaga sa mga bahay-bahay, nagbibigay ng polyeto at nagbibigay ng paliwanag bakit nila kandidato si ganito. So this is going to be, how do you call it? Down to the trenches kind of campaign, di ba? Hanggang sa trench warfare ito, di ba? Every inch counts, every vote counts, every effort will be precious. You know, VP Lenny won by 260,000 votes, less than 1% of the total votes cast, and yet she won. And this is how we're going to we see this. No? It's going to be close. It's going to be tough. It's going to be down the wire, but every effort is crucial and important. And that's why, in the end, you inspire us. We'd like to thank you. Many of you have gone out of your way. I've never seen this in my entire political career, even in the 1988 when I first ran up to today. I've never seen this kind of commitment from the volunteers. But we have to reach out and convince others. So yung lugaw, importante yan, tulong yan, because talaga namang we are in the middle of a crisis. We are in the middle of a disaster. Millions are hungry. So what do you do in a disaster? You feed the hungry. And that's what we're doing. But at the same time, addressing the challenges of the disaster, I think the disaster could have been better addressed if we had good leadership. And so it's now, the challenge is how do you connect the disaster and why we're still suffering and leadership that is needed to turn things around. Because people, I believe people, the D, the E, they're capable of making informed decisions. But precisely the information must be brought to bear, and they should know. And maybe in the end, maybe it's the ever the optimist in me. I really believe when people are the ones starting to take a stand. Sabi ko nga, there is no political power on earth that can match, di ba?
Yes.
Citizens in their vast numbers mobilizing, committed towards a common goal. And this is my last story, very quickly. I remember in 2007, I ran as an independent. I didn't join the opposition because Erap was the head of the opposition. I asked him to resign. And I didn't join the administration because GMA was heading the administration. And I also asked her to resign. I told myself, I cannot explain this to Casey, to Frankie, and to Miel that in 2007, I asked both presidents to resign, and then I had to put that all aside, swallow my principles and say, it's okay, I have to win. I don't distinguish between being a senator and a father and a husband. It's all the same to me. There are no, different set of standards to what is true or what is right. Otherwise, how can I teach my children the difference between right or wrong when I myself have already become confused about what's right or wrong? So I didn't run with either ticket. Opposition, I went solo. I ran the independent run. And it was not easy because at that time, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, what we had to go through. We had to build things from the ground up. But one thing that really caught my, was I was in a resettlement area in Pampanga, where the Lahar victims had to be transferred. So as we would going through the motorcade, somebody came up to me. He was in slippers, basketball shorts, basketball jersey, and he grabbed my hand and he told me, "Isama mo ito, Kiko." That was like 2 weeks into the start of the campaign. And I was really bearing the brunt of the difficulty of what the decision I made. Sabi ko nga, grabe. Ganito pala yung ibig sabihin ng independent. No? So when I opened my palm, it was 100 pesos. May grasa pa nga. Parang galing ata sa garahe o talyer. No? And that's when I realized people are actually betting, tumataya. And I said, well, when people start, making a stand, and we won. We placed fifth, but I think we were third based on the exit poll kasi we were 3-5, pero may manual pa nun eh. So yun, so in the end, we have to trust our people that they are capable of making an informed decision, but at the same time, we have to make sure that the information that they receive is precisely accurate and the truth. So we have five months to make that happen together. And this is not just the fight of VP Lenny or my fight. This is our fight. And it's an honor and a privilege to be fighting alongside you.
Yes, Senator Kiko.
Ang daming pagkakataon dito sa buong programa natin na kumuntik na ako maluhat na goosebumps. Not because of the personality lang, but this love for the country. It's so inspiring. Yeah, bago tayo magtapos, may isa pang Katipunero na gustong bumati sa atin. Si Gary. Hindi siya talaga dito. Pero siya, dito rin nagsimula ang career niya sa Katipunan. Kasi yung Merino, lagi siyang iniimbita noon sa mga variety shows at mga college fairs. So he started his career in Merinol. So nandito po si Gary V. Gusto mabungati sa mga Katipuneros.
Hello everyone. To my bro.
Hi Gary. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Surprising everyone. I'm sure everybody will be thrilled. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say thank you, sa lahat ng mga tumali ngayon, to meet this man who I have known since elementary, because I was from LaSalle Green Hills and Senator was also from there, volleyball team, ako track and field team. He's only a year ahead of me, basically. Batch 81 sa high school, ako batch 82. Pero like of your napansin na kaagad. I noticed even at that time his leadership skill, not just his skill, but his passion to do what is right. And kanina, the word activist came in, and I must admit, I too was, I always had a negative feeling about activists and activism. So I decided to go onto the dictionary and read what activism is, which an activist participates in, the act of activism. Activism consists of efforts to promote, impede, direct, or intervene in social, political, economic, or environmental reform with the desire to make changes in society towards a perceived greater good. And if there's one thing that I knew that you all were going to feel, was the sincerity that comes from Kiko with his stories. Yes. These are not made up. None of these stories were rehearsed. They were just a part of his life. He learned from it, and now he's fighting not just a hard fight, but I believe he's fighting a good fight. And I think that's what all of us need to also do. That when we go out there and express and let people know what this whole fight is about, that we do it in the proper way too. Kasi titirahin talaga tayo. No? Everybody will have their own idea and their own thing to say about what we need to say to people. But I want to thank you because I know that with enough prayer and with the young ones especially who are here, and the way you've been asking questions and the depth of your concern about this country, then I think you're speaking to a man and you're meeting a man right now who has that kind of depth also that you have. So thank you so much, just for supporting my brother-in-law, Senator Kiko Pangilinan. And I join you, I stand with you on this fight, especially as the time comes close. You only have 5 months, but we'll do a lot more, as the months go by. Bro, we love you.
Thank you. Thank you. We love you.
Sir Gary V. Sir
Love
Gary
you,
V.
Ate.
We love you too, Sir Gary V.
Yes, we love you,
Speak-
Sir Gary.
Speaking of not rehearsed, no rehearsal. Sir Gary V, what song of yours is bagay kaya kay Senator Kiko or to his pursuit or ano? This is so instant. Pasensya na po. Meron ba? And maybe you can instead of saying what it is, baka
Make us whole again.
Okay. Tagalog.
Ito po walang rehearsal. Walang rehearsal
to this is for everyone that's here, from my brother-in-law to the whole family that's here, and to everyone that's just participating and listening now. But this is the song that came to mind, and it goes like this. Sikapin mo, pilitin mo, tibayan ang iyong puso, tanging ikaw ang huhubo sa iyong bukas. Huwag mo sanang akalain, natutulog pa ang Diyos. Ang buhay niyo ay mayroong halaga sa Kanya.
Woo! Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat, Sir Gary. Wow.
Okay.
I have one more kwento. Just one quick kwento.
Sure, Sir Senator Kiko.
And Sharon knows this, and many of my siblings know this. I go to a alone time retreat twice a year, and that's where I pray. I light a candle. Our mother taught us to light candles when we pray, discern, ask for God's guidance, etc. But I have music that I listen to that somehow uplifts me, and that's one of the songs that I listen to. The other one is "The Warrior Is a Child," and the other one is "Lead Me, Lord." So among so when I'm in my alone time, that's part of what I when I'm in prayer, these are the songs. So those three, natutulog ba ang Diyos, Lead Me Lord, and The Warrior Is a Child. Yeah. Yes.
Maraming salamat, Senator Kiko. Okay, at maraming salamat for making the hashtag may pagmamalaki ko become more powerful and more charged and truer because of this session. So promise yan, ipagmamalaki po namin. Dahil di kayo epal, kaya kami na pong bahala dyan. Shoutout sa maraming tao. At dito po nagtatapos ang kumustahan at kwentuhan natin dito sa Katipunan kasama si Senator Kiko. Samahan ninyo kami sa mga susunod pang hashtag KKK, kwentuhan at kumustahan sa Katipunan.
Ayan, so maraming salamat po. Sa ating mga viewers, meron na lang po tayong 5 months left na sa chat box po natin na ang mga social media platforms at mga link kung paano kayo pwede mag-volunteer para talagang masigurado natin ang pagkapanalo ni Senator Kiko. Sa ating mga viewers, mga supporters, tandaan po natin na nasa kamay ng bawat botante ang pag-asa ng bayan. Tayo po ay makipagkwentuhan, maging marites. Ano po ba yung marites? Mare, ano yung latest? At maging marisa, mare, isa pa nga para sa bayan. Ipakilala ang deserving manalo. Makipag-usap ng malumanay, maging mapanuri sa mga sineshare sa social media, be creative para mas maabot pa ang mas nakararami. Be part of a group para mas collective at organize ang actions natin, whether online or offline. Sa mga Gen Zers dyan at mga millennials, create TikTok videos that show the pink way of life and content that highlight yung mga deserving na mga kandidato natin. At higit sa lahat, suportahan natin ang mga taong may plataforma malapit sa ating core values na katotohanan, katarungan, kapayapaan, at kalikasan. Ako po si Mir Matika Ortiz.
At ako naman po si Ron Kapinding.
Hanggang sa muli nating
kumustahan
at kwentuhan
sa
sa
Katipunan.
Katipunan.
Thank you,
Maraming
Senator
salamat
Kiko.
po.
Thank you. Salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Salamat.